Hey everybody, welcome to Yoga How To. Today we're going to talk about spiritual development, spiritual maturity, signposts of spiritual growth in your yoga practice. Let's get into it. A fun question I always love to puzzle young teacher trainees with early days in their teacher training is, what is the goal of yoga? And if we look into the kind of archive of what the Shastras say, of what the tradition says, it's a really simple answer. It's a Sorientological process of moving from a world of suffering to a world of liberation from that suffering. That's pretty easy to understand. However, when we get into the practical aspects of that, into the theoretical aspect of that, not so cut and dry. So are we just failures if we never attain this pie in the sky goal of being without suffering, completely liberated from our suffering? I think there are some definite signposts along the way that we can glean from other hints in yoga. We can also look at modern Western psychology and modern social sciences to give us some clues in terms of what does it mean to be spiritually mature, to be spiritually developed, and to know that we're on the right path along the way. First thing I want to say is that the disclaimer to all of this is that I am of the firm belief that you should be the judge and jury of your own spiritual growth. You are also responsible for it. So if somebody else is kind of holding a carrot out in front of you, telling you you need to do certain things to be spiritual, I think this is questionable. I also think that nobody else can really tell you if you are spiritual or not. I think that spirituality is definitely something that shouldn't be a competition or something that we compare amongst and with each other. And it's definitely not something we should lord over each other. Experienced Jnana Yoga once said is that the experience of pure consciousness gives you authority over nothing other than the experience of pure consciousness. I think this is really great. A lot of times we get in our minds that if somebody has experienced pure consciousness and they are enlightened, that they know the past, the present, the future. Now, there are people out there who believe that there are gurus who know these kinds of things, and I'm not here to talk about that. That is beyond the scope of what I'm focused on with yoga being something that is practical, something that is meant to be for contemporary use, our modern society, and to meet most people that I know where they're at, where they need it most. All that to say is that this question of what is the goal of yoga, we should start to fill this out categorically for ourselves. So if the far out goal is liberation from suffering, what are some milestones along the way we can make sure that we are hitting there, making sure that we're moving in the direction? So in this book, Transcend by Scott Barry Kaufman, this is a book about self-actualization, which was Abraham Maslow's real life's work after he came up with his pyramid of needs, right? You can see this description on page 81. You've got safety, connection, self-esteem. This is cool. He moves it on into these growth realms of exploration, love, and purpose. So these are things that we're trying to achieve in yoga. There's this graph I want to share. This is a x cubed graph, all right? So you see here, this can be the trajectory of yoga. This is a very common trajectory for yoga. This first little hill that we have to climb up, this is often our starting point, and this first hill is the hill of climbing out of suffering. And then we finally get to this plateaued place. This plateaued place is called comfort. So this can be kind of a deceitful false summit, because we tend to think of, especially if we're knowing even early on, which most people don't know early on, but if we are informed that the goal of yoga is to end suffering, and maybe we don't even know that, but a lot of times we go to yoga because we are suffering. If we get to that comfortable zone, we think that that's where the journey ends. We think, well, the suffering's gone, so what else is there, right? And the honeymoon of yoga ends. We sometimes feel a need to change direction with our time and our intention because we're not benefiting from yoga anymore? Well, a couple things happen. Number one is as we increase our ability to manage the suffering in our life with our yoga practice, our sensitivity and awareness will increase as well. If we're only doing yoga to manage our suffering and not increasing our awareness, not increasing our sensitivities, we're actually falling into the trap of spiritual bypass. So that's the first thing. Second thing I would mention is that this can be representative of using yoga to get healthy, to get strong, to get embodied. There's a whole host of therapeutic aspect of yoga that happens at this first kind of learning curve. And then when we get here, we have to recognize that we have transformed. If we're not aware of the ways in which we've changed, we won't be ready for the next adventure. And this is where these self-actualization aspects, these higher aspects of yoga happen. And so it's in the way in which our sensitivity and our awareness increases that we actually begin to suffer things that aren't innate to ourselves. We begin to suffer in an empathetic way that I think for some people can feel like a burden or obligation. Definitely something that when we're first confronted with it, it's justifiable to want to ignore it, avoid it, bypass it. But what we really realize is that without confronting it, our spiritual journey becomes stunted and stalls out. So it's in this kind of sequel to our original yoga practice where our needs get met and we start to open up into a broader conversation with our yoga practice to where start to look at deeper aspects of the practice. We're no longer just doing asana. We want to start to learn about philosophy. If we've had good teachers and we are positioned in our perspective in our life in a way where we're open to these kinds of things, we're going to deepen the practice through continuing education by being attracted to teachers who are more than asana teachers, who are speaking about the yoga tradition. They're speaking about other limbs of yoga, and they're also speaking about the way in which the tradition meets our contemporary needs. So coming back to this question, how do we know that we're on the right path? How do we know that we are, in fact, moving out of that stagnant plateau of our comfort zone and is beginning to climb that second learning curve towards not just physical, mental, psycho-emotional health and welfare, but also spiritual health and welfare? So, some indicators of what I would call small signs. So I like to call them big dubs and small dubs. What I mean by that is W's. So the woes, the wows, and the wins. You know, we all practice yoga and we get these aha moments along the way. So these, I call them the W's, the dubs. So the small dubs along the way. We know that our yoga practice is serving us when we start to become more in awe of the natural, simple, smaller things in the world, like a baby smiling at us. How is our gratitude quotient? Are we more grateful for the things in our life? Are we finding contentment with the things that we have? Are we allowing ourselves to be honest with our emotions, to be honest with ourselves, and to be honest with other people? Are we increasing our sense of safety in vulnerability with ourselves, our empathy for other people, our ability to be authentic? Are we sleeping better? Are we becoming less reactive? Are we being more present from time to time? Are we finding ourselves more stability with our moods? Is there a clarity of intention and purpose and meaning in our life? Is our intention and purpose getting more defined? Are we finding ourselves attracted to and promoting more opportunity for moments of peace and quiet in our life? Do we find ourselves making better decisions guided by clear intuition and an innate higher wisdom? Are we finding the ability to think for ourselves, to think more critically, to take on contrary thoughts that we otherwise might have felt unable to hear out? And is self-care becoming a routine? These are the small dubs, things that are points of inspiration for our learning and our growth along the path of yoga. All right, now this next list is what I call the big dubs, the big wows, woes, and wins of signposts for spiritual growth, okay? And this is a list that is not my own. I have to give credit to Andrew Newberg. I learned these 5. They're from a book called Varieties of Spirituality. This has a lot of crossover from like people who have any kind of spiritual experience, right? So number 1, greater sense of unity, less sense of existentialism. Number 2, a newfound clarity. Though the situation may not have changed, the perspective has, like putting on clear glasses in the morning. Number 3, emotional and sensual intensity. We're going to come back to that one here in just a minute. Number 4, a sense of surrender and acceptance. Number 5, resolute desire for actual change on a deep fundamental level. That one's interesting too, because sometimes that is what it takes for us to begin the yoga journey, to climb up that first big hill of suffering. As they say, the old adage is, humans only change when it hurts enough, right? That kind of comes out of the recovery world. There's something like that. I'm kind of paraphrasing and mincing it up a little bit, but like, we will change once there is enough pain. Otherwise, humans are pretty stubborn. We don't want to change things. And it goes into that 4th thing, which is a sense of surrender and acceptance. That is why sometimes we're so stubborn about changes, because we want to be in charge. We want to will a different way. And it sometimes gets so bad, the only way we can do anything is by letting go. Now, some of these things can happen to you at any point during the journey, whether you're on the first incline, whether you're on the plateau, whether you're on the second incline. And by the way, that whole X cubed graph, you can be simultaneously on various parts of that journey. Emotionally, you might be ahead of it. Psychologically, you might be behind it. Physically, you might be on that plot line in varying places, depending on what kind of injuries you're working with, what kind of adaptations you have to take. So remember that it's not linear, it's not limited, it is liminal. But one thing that you know is a true indicator that not only are you on the right path and these things are happening to you, but they're showing up in your life in an integrated way when you are becoming kinder, more loving and compassionate, when you are feeling the courage to be more sincere in your life, increasing, again, the ability to be honest, intimate, and vulnerable. Another indicator that you're on the path to spiritual growth is that you're more resilient resilient in crisis, times of crisis. You're becoming less ruminative, you're becoming more resilient, action-oriented, process-oriented, becoming less reliant on external stimulus for gratification and satisfaction. The last one here, and there's many more, but I'm going to mention becoming more aware of interdependent systems, recognizing that the world does not revolve around you, that others can benefit a lot from small and simple sacrifices that you are now more willing to make. Again, we have this pie in the sky goal of ultimate spiritual goal is ending suffering. Well, there's a lot of the things that we can do along the way that make us sure that we're not failing and that we're on the right path. So I wanted to come back to this 3rd big W, this emotional and sensual intensity, because there's this concept in positive psychology of the post-peak experience order. And when we are availing ourselves in life of peak experiences, the post-peak experience order is essentially raising our baseline of wellness, increasing a sense of harmony, clarity, peacefulness, and balance. It's giving yourself experiences that we integrate, synthesize, and process in ways that bring a greater sense of order into our life, why things are happening the way they are. It brings us into what I call the alignment with the golden thread. And this is kind of where I want to end things today with this, is that when we're doing things that are good for us, when we're doing things that are filling our cup, whether that is physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and social, what we will find is a greater sense of autonomy, a greater sense of self-efficacy, knowing thyself better, a greater sense of purpose and meaning in our life. And ultimately, being in alignment with our physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual state with this growth that yoga promises, this healing that yoga promises us, it does start to put us in harmony with the natural world, and maybe you want to call it supernatural world or preternatural world, in a way that these little indicators, these little clues, these coincidences start to show up. All of a sudden you open your front door and there's a crow sitting there, and on any other given day you might just think, oh, there's a crow there. But on those days where you know that that crow is there to remind you to be present, to remind you to notice that the things that are happening around you and in your life, they're meant to be messages. They're meant to inform you. They're golden threads that are carrying you along the way in a fashion that is helping you not only integrate where you're coming from, but make sure that you're on the right path. In the old Irish tradition, there is this concept of an augury. Auguries are indicators of spiritual guidance through the flight patterns and movements of the birds. And this was an old Celtic myth that then shifted into auguries, kind of got used in ways of reading messages and signs and symbols from the natural world as ways to be guided in your life. And this can sound woo-woo, this can sound weird. The point is not to cultivate your intuition, your openness to these auguries in a way that you are meant to be the knower of what they mean. Sometimes the augury, the sign, shows up in your life just to let you know, hey, now is the time to pay attention, or hey, you're on the right path, or hey, this is the direction forward. Sometimes it will take you down roads you have no idea about, and it's important that you are filling your cup up in all these ways so that when adventure comes knocking on your door, you're ready to be led by the hand and take yourself there on your own hero's journey. So I want to leave you with a little excerpt from David Whyte's poem Auguries. They have happened all your life, the bird tapping at your dawn window with the message from your mother, telling you through a half-sleep you were living in a strange new parallel, both on your own and accompanied now along ways you could only begin to imagine. Thanks for tuning in this week to Yoga How To on all things spiritual, signposts, growth. How the heck do we know? Hopefully you got something a little bit practical for you. You don't have to remember these lists. It's nothing that is something that you need to be carrying along in your practice in a way that is so steadfast and detrimental. But my offering to you is pay attention to the golden threads. Pay attention to this simple thing that I remember hearing a teacher say at one time. They said, how do you know that the practice that you are doing is the right practice for you? Simply by, is it making you sweeter? Is it making you sweeter? If it's making you more contracted, if it's making you more rigid, if it's making you a harder person, that's something to look at. Maybe that's too reductive. Maybe that's simple. You tell me what you think. What are your signposts for spiritual growth on the practice? What are the things that pop up for you that let you know that you're doing the right yoga at the right time and the right way for you? Even when it gets hard, hang in there. Appreciate you. Till next time, we'll see you.